Detective Ethan Riley's apartment was a testament to order, a fortress against the unpredictable chaos of the outside world. Every book on his shelf was aligned with military precision, spine out, by author and then by publication date. His kitchen, gleaming stainless steel and polished granite, rarely saw the frenzy of culinary experimentation. Tonight, like most nights, a single ceramic mug of chamomile tea steamed beside a precisely cut slice of whole wheat toast on a meticulously clean coaster. The only sound was the soft, almost imperceptible hum of the refrigerator, a steady, reassuring drone that punctuated the quiet. He wasn't lonely, not precisely. Loneliness suggested an ache, a void that needed filling. Ethan simply was. His routines were a comfort, a predictable rhythm in a profession that thrived on disruption. He found solace in the clear-cut lines of police procedure, the logic of evidence, the satisfaction of a case neatly closed. Life, he believed, should aspire to the same meticulous order. He was off duty, heading home after a particularly draining shift, the city's evening symphony of car horns and distant sirens fading as he turned onto his quieter residential street. A flicker of movement by the corner caught his eye. A small, wizened woman, her face etched with years of sun and worry, was struggling to pack up her fruit stand. 3 young men, boisterous and clearly emboldened by a few too many drinks, were circling her, laughing as one playfully but deliberately knocked over a basket of bright red apples. The woman let out a small cry of dismay. Ethan's first instinct, honed by years of protocol, was to assess the situation. No immediate threat of violence, but clear harassment. He didn't reach for his badge, nor did he puff out his chest. Instead, he simply walked up, a calm, unassuming presence. "Everything all right here?" His voice was even conversational, yet carried an undercurrent of quiet authority. He didn't accuse, he observed. The young men turned, momentarily startled by his unexpected appearance. The one who'd knocked the apples smirked. "Just having some fun, officer." The word officer was laced with defiance, a challenge. Ethan bent down, slowly and deliberately, and began picking up the scattered apples. "Looks like these fell. We should probably get them back in the basket before someone slips." He didn't look at the youths, his gaze fixed on the task, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. His actions spoke louder than any words or threats. He was simply doing the right thing, calmly, without fuss. The air shifted. The casual aggression of the young men faltered. One of them, a taller boy with a nervous energy, nudged his friend. "Come on, man. Let's just go." The instigator hesitated, then shrugged, the bravado draining from him. "Whatever." The 3 youths ambled away, their laughter subdued, their confidence visibly deflated. Ethan finished gathering the last apple, placing it gently in the basket. The old woman, her eyes wide with gratitude, managed a shaky smile. "Thank you, officer. Thank you." He gave her a small, reassuring nod. "Be careful out here," he advised, then continued his walk home, the quiet satisfaction of a small, wrong-righted settling deep within him. It was moments like these, simple acts of upholding decency, that reminded him why he wore the badge. The following Monday, the precinct hummed with the usual morning cacophony of ringing phones, hushed conversations, and the clatter of keyboards. Ethan was at his desk, meticulously reviewing cold cases, when Captain Davies cleared his throat beside him. "Riley, your new partner's here." Ethan looked up. Curiosity piqued. His last partner had transferred out of state, and he'd been working solo for weeks. A woman stood beside Captain Davies, her posture ramrod straight, her gaze steady and intelligent. She was lean, with an athletic build, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense ponytail. "Detective Sarah Chen," Captain Davies announced, "transferred in from a specialized unit." He emphasized the word specialized with a subtle, almost imperceptible hesitation. A fleeting glance at Chen. Sarah offered a brief, professional nod. Detective Riley. Heard good things. Her voice was low, calm, betraying no emotion. Ethan extended a hand. Her grip was firm, surprisingly strong. Welcome to the squad. Detective Chen. Call me Ethan. Sarah, she replied. Over the next few weeks, Ethan quickly learned that Sarah Chen was unlike any partner he'd ever had. She was exceptionally good. Too good. Sometimes, during stakeouts, her observational skills were uncanny. She'd spot details Ethan, with his years of experience, would miss. In the precinct's training simulations, her combat scores were off the charts, her movements fluid and deadly efficient. When they reviewed case files, her analytical mind sliced through extraneous information, identifying crucial connections with startling speed. She called it just good training, dismissing any praise with a shrug, crediting her previous special unit with her abilities. Ethan, ever the observer, noticed things. The way her eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, even in a seemingly safe environment like the precinct bullpen. The way she handled her service weapon, not just with competence, but with an almost ingrained familiarity that spoke of countless hours beyond the typical range practice. One afternoon, as she stretched, rolling her shoulders, he caught a glimpse of a faint, almost invisible white scar, like a thin surgical line, just behind her right ear, barely visible beneath her hairline. Another time, he saw a similar mark on the inside of her left wrist, partially covered by her watch. Small, insignificant details, he told himself, probably from some minor accident. But they lingered in his mind, tiny anomalies in the otherwise perfectly composed facade of Detective Sarah Chen. He found himself wondering, often, exactly what kind of special unit she had been a part of. The seeds of mystery were subtly sown, a faint, intriguing whisper beneath the surface of their burgeoning, professional partnership. The quiet hum of routine that Ethan cherished was about to be shattered. The first sign was the news report flickering across the precinct's large monitor, usually reserved for mundane police alerts. The anchor's voice was grave, his words punctuated by images of a massive, impenetrable corporate vault, its steel door peeled back like a sardine can. The Athena Group, a global financial services giant, has been targeted in what authorities are calling one of the most audacious heists in recent history. Millions in bearer bonds and untraceable digital assets vanished without a trace, leaving no forced entry, no alarms tripped, only a single, perfectly cut symbol etched into the vault's inner wall. Ethan felt a professional affront. The Athena Group's security was legendary, a labyrinth of laser grids, biometric scanners, and pressure plates. The idea of someone bypassing it so cleanly was illogical. His frustration began to simmer, a logical mind grappling with the absurd. But the affront became personal when the second heist hit. This time, it was the Paragon Trust, a private bank known for handling the city's elite, including his older sister, Clara, who worked as a senior financial advisor there. He'd teased her about its Fort Knox-like security for years. Now, pictures of its compromised vault, identical to the Athena Group's, stared back at him from the news. The same impossible entry, the same unsettlingly precise symbol. He felt a cold dread creeping into his meticulously ordered world. This wasn't just a case, it was a personal challenge, a mockery of the very systems he believed in. He imagined Clara's distress, the fear in her eyes as she realized her workplace, her sanctuary, had been violated with such contemptuous ease. A quiet rage began to stir within him, a desire to restore the order that had been so brazenly disrupted. Sarah, meanwhile, stood beside him, her posture rigid, her gaze fixed on the screen. Ethan noticed an unsettling familiarity in her eyes as the news reporter zoomed in on the etched symbol. It was abstract, geometric, yet imbued with a strange, almost ancient quality. A fleeting shadow passed across Sarah's face, a flicker of something raw and unreadable. Recognition, perhaps, or a deeper, more profound disquiet. She didn't speak, didn't move, but the subtle clenching of her jaw, the barely perceptible tightening of her hands at her sides, betrayed an inner turmoil. "They're good," Ethan muttered, almost to himself, his voice tight with professional admiration mixed with growing dread. "Too good." Sarah finally spoke, her voice low, almost a whisper. "They're not just good, Ethan. They're familiar." She didn't elaborate, but the single word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Captain Davies, his face grim, called them into his office. "Riley, Chen, you're on this, full force. This isn't just a series of heists. It's a direct challenge to the department, to the city. No leads, no forensics, no witnesses. It's like they're ghosts." He gestured to a large screen displaying enlarged images of the etched symbol. And this symbol was found at both scenes. Any ideas? Ethan leaned forward, studying the symbol. It was a stylized, intertwined pair of serpents, forming an intricate knot. Could be a gang tag, a calling card. But it doesn't match anything in our database. Sarah remained silent. Her eyes narrowed, tracing the lines of the serpents as if reading an ancient text. A muscle twitched in her cheek. She knew this symbol. Ethan saw it, a fleeting flash of comprehension in her eyes, quickly masked. He filed it away, another piece of the puzzle that was Sarah Chen. The heists continued, each one more audacious than the last. Targeting high-value, seemingly impenetrable targets, a private art collection in a penthouse apartment with state-of-the-art climate control and motion sensors. A secure data center housing sensitive government information. The pattern was identical surgical precision. No forced entry, no alarms, and always the serpent symbol. Ethan found himself working tirelessly, fueled by a mixture of professional duty and the growing personal investment in solving these impossible crimes. He pored over blueprints, reviewed security footage that showed nothing but empty corridors, interviewed baffled security personnel, but the logical solutions eluded him. He was a man accustomed to facts, and these crimes defied all known facts. Sarah, on the other hand, displayed an unsettling, almost prescient ability to anticipate the criminals' next moves. "They'll hit the financial district next," she'd say, almost casually, pointing to a section of the city map. Specifically, the older, pre-digitalized vaults. They'll be looking for tangible assets, something that can't be traced online. Her hunches were disturbingly accurate, though always a step behind the actual events. "How do you know that?" Sarah Ethan asked one night, after her prediction about a bullion depository in the financial district proved eerily close to the mark. She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Just patterns, psychological profiles. My old unit, we dealt with a lot of these kinds of highly organized syndicates." Her explanation was vague, unsatisfactory. Ethan watched her, the questions piling up. Her familiarity with their methods wasn't just impressive. It was almost like she spoke their language. One evening, after a frustrating day of hitting dead ends, they were back at the Athena Group's vault, part of an extended forensic sweep. The lead tech, a gruff veteran named Miller, was grumbling about the futility of it all. "Cleanest job I've ever seen. Not a single print, not a stray fiber. It's like they phased through the walls." He gestured to a small, almost invisible scorch mark on the polished floor, near where the vault door had been. "Only thing odd is this. Almost like some kind of energy discharge, but too precise for an explosion." Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes fixed on the scorch mark, and her breath hitched. Ethan saw it then, unmistakable. A tremor ran through her body, so subtle it would have been missed by anyone else. Her eyes, usually cool and guarded, widened imperceptibly, a raw, primal fear flickering within their depths. It was the crack in her facade Ethan had been waiting for, the undeniable evidence that this case was not just a case for her. She knelt down, her fingers trembling slightly as she traced the edge of the mark. This isn't from an explosion," she murmured, her voice barely audible. This is a thermal signature, from a specific kind of cutter, one I've only seen used by a very specific group." She stood up abruptly, her back to Ethan, her shoulders hunched as if bracing for a blow. Her composure had finally fractured. The quiet, contained woman he knew was gone, replaced by someone visibly shaken, almost on the verge of panic. "Or," Ethan asked softly, his voice full of concern, but also a dawning realization. "What is it? What group?" She turned, her face pale, her eyes haunted. "No, it can't be. He was supposed to be dead." The words were ripped from her, a desperate, almost pleading whisper. Her gaze was distant, fixed on something Ethan couldn't see, a ghost from a past she had tried desperately to bury. Ethan felt a jolt. Not they. This wasn't just a syndicate. This was a person. And this person was linked to Sarah's past in a way that terrified her. The sterile, logical investigation suddenly became a personal odyssey into a dangerous, unknown territory. He looked at the etched serpent symbol again, and then at the faint, almost imperceptible scar behind Sarah's ear. A terrifying theory began to form in his mind, connecting the precise, almost surgical nature of the heists with the precise, almost surgical scar. This wasn't just a puzzle for him to solve. It was a deadly secret that had found Sarah, and by extension, him. There was no going back now. The case had found them. The next morning, Ethan woke with a sense of unease that permeated his usually tranquil apartment. He had tossed and turned all night, the image of Sarah's terrified face superimposed over the cold, calculated symbol of the serpent. He remembered her words. He was supposed to be dead. The implication was chilling. This wasn't just a criminal, but someone from her personal history, a specter she believed had been vanquished. He found Sarah at the precinct, already at her desk, her usual composed demeanor back in place, but with a subtle tension around her eyes, a tightness to her jaw that spoke of sleepless nights. She avoided his gaze, busying herself with files that seemed far too mundane for the escalating crisis. "Sarah," Ethan began, his voice low, pulling up a chair beside her. "About yesterday, about that scorch mark." She cut him off, her voice flat. "It's nothing. A coincidence. Just a specific kind of thermal cutter. They're rare, but not unheard of." She tried to dismiss it, to rebuild the wall she had inadvertently let fall. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," Ethan said, his voice firm but not accusatory. "I saw your face. You recognized it, and you said, 'He. Who is he?'" Sarah stiffened, her shoulders rising imperceptibly. She sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of years. She finally turned to him, her eyes clouded with a mixture of fear and resignation. "His name is Cale. Or at least, that's what he called himself back then. He was a ghost, a whisper, a legend in a very dark corner of the world I used to inhabit." Ethan leaned forward, his mind racing. "The special unit." She nodded, a bitter smile touching her lips. "More than that. It was a clandestine program, designed to train operatives for situations beyond conventional law enforcement, counterterrorism, corporate espionage, black ops. We were ghosts. Ethan, untraceable, unaccountable. We were trained to be the best, to dismantle threats that no one else could touch." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Cale was my mentor, my trainer. He taught me everything I know." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Mentor. The word conjured images of dark alliances, of skills honed for purposes far removed from upholding the law. And he was supposed to be dead. We thought so. During an operation. A mission gone wrong. He was trapped. The facility was destroyed. There was no way he could have survived. Her voice wavered, a hint of old trauma resurfacing. But if that symbol, if that scorch mark is his, then he's back. And he's coming for me. Ethan felt a surge of protectiveness mixed with a profound sense of being out of his depth. This wasn't a standard police investigation. This was a vendetta, a shadow war spilling onto the city streets, and his partner was at the heart of it. Why is he coming for you? Sarah. She hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window, watching the mundane street life outside, the taxis, the pedestrians, the delivery trucks, a stark contrast to the world she was describing. Because I was the one who didn't follow orders. The one who refused to become like him. He saw something in me, a potential for ruthlessness. And when I chose a different path, when I walked away from the program, he saw it as a betrayal. He always had a flair for the dramatic, a need to prove his superiority. These heists, they're not just about money or power. They're about sending a message. To me. To the people who trained us. A new wave of understanding washed over Ethan. The artistic precision of the heists, the symbolic serpent. It was all a signature, a taunt from a master to his former apprentice. And Sarah, the Phoenix, as Captain Davies had once playfully nicknamed her in reference to her sharp mind, was indeed rising from the ashes of a buried past, whether she wanted to or not. Captain Davies walked by their desks, a stack of new reports in his hand. He paused, looking at them, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes as he noticed the tension. Anything new on the Athena and Paragon cases? Detectives. Sarah quickly composed herself, her face a mask of professionalism. Still analyzing the thermal residue. Captain, it's highly unusual. Points to a custom-made tool. She offered a technical, evasive answer, her eyes meeting Ethan's, a silent plea for discretion. Ethan picked up on it immediately. We're narrowing down the potential manufacturers. Captain, it's a very limited market. He covered for her, a decision made instinctively, driven by a growing loyalty and a realization that this case demanded a different kind of trust. Captain Davies grunted, his gaze lingering on Sarah for a moment too long. He had heard whispers about her past unit, rumors of its shadowy existence and the exceptional, sometimes unsettling, capabilities of its operatives. He hadn't dismissed her transfer outright. Her file was impeccable, albeit sparse on details. But the sheer precision of these new crimes, combined with Sarah's almost intuitive understanding of them, was beginning to raise red flags. He retreated to his office, pulling up Sarah Chen's personnel file on his computer, a nagging feeling compelling him to dig deeper into the special unit she came from. The pieces weren't fitting together neatly in his mind, and Captain Davies, like Ethan, was a man who valued order. He zoomed in on a grainy picture from her transfer papers, noticing the sharpness in her eyes, a certain guarded intensity that now, in light of the impossible heists, seemed less like quiet competence and more like something else, something dangerous. For Ethan, the point of no return had been crossed. He was no longer just a detective on a case. He was standing on the precipice of a hidden world, bound to his partner by a dangerous secret. He looked at Sarah, a woman who carried the weight of a legendary, deadly past, and knew, with chilling certainty, that their lives were about to change irrevocably. The quiet hum of his orderly life had been replaced by the deafening roar of a brewing storm. And he, the man who believed in predictable rhythms, was about to be swept into the heart of it. The city's underbelly, usually a distant threat confined to case files and precinct briefings, suddenly felt very close, a living, breathing entity coiling around them. Sarah knew Cale, and Cale was here. The heists were no longer just crimes. They were a cruel, elaborate game of cat and mouse, with Sarah as the primary target. Ethan, despite his ingrained need for order, found himself adapting, learning to navigate the chaotic currents of Sarah's hidden world. Their investigation took on a new urgency, less about evidence and more about anticipation. Sarah, her senses heightened by the return of her old ghost, began to lead. She knew Cale's patterns, his subtle tells, his penchant for theatricality. He'll target places of symbolic power, not just monetary value, she explained, tracing lines on a map of the city, places that represent control, authority, or secrets. He wants to prove he can dismantle them, just as he tried to dismantle me. Their first real lead came from a seemingly innocuous detail. During a review of the data center heist, Sarah noticed a faint, almost imperceptible electromagnetic signature on the last hard drive accessed before the system wipe. It wasn't a fingerprint, it was a unique resonance, like a phantom limb she somehow recognized. "It's an older model, a customized frequency jammer," she murmured, her fingers hovering over the schematic. "Something from the early days of the program. He's deliberately using outdated tech. Something he knows I'd recognize." It was a taunt, a twisted nostalgic nod to their shared, dark past. Their pursuit of a black market tech dealer, rumored to specialize in vintage clandestine equipment, led them to a grimy warehouse district by the docks. The air hung thick with the smell of brine and decay, the silence broken only by the distant clang of metal on metal. This wasn't a police station, or a neatly ordered apartment. This was Cale's world. As they approached the warehouse, a sudden, blinding flash erupted from a nearby alley, followed by the shattering of glass as the rear window of their unmarked cruiser exploded inwards. Ethan instinctively ducked, drawing his service weapon, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was a good shot, a decent tactician. But this was different. This was an ambush, meticulously planned and executed with chilling precision. Before he could react, 3 figures, clad in dark, unidentifiable tactical gear, emerged from the shadows. They moved with a disturbing fluidity, like trained predators. Ethan fired a warning shot, but they barely flinched, advancing with menacing intent. He braced himself, remembering his academy training, the clear-cut rules of engagement. Then, Sarah moved. It wasn't a draw and fire. It was a blur. She didn't just move. She flowed. One moment she was beside him. The next, she was a whirlwind of motion, a primal force unleashed. Her movements were not what Ethan recognized as police defensive tactics. This was something else entirely, a brutal, efficient dance of lethal precision. She disarmed the first assailant with a swift, almost invisible twist, turning their own momentum against them. The operative's weapon clattered to the ground as Sarah used their own arm to deliver a stunning blow to their throat, sending them sprawling. She didn't pause, didn't hesitate. Her body was a weapon. Every limb, every muscle, honed for combat. She delivered a lightning-fast kick to the knee of the second assailant, the sharp crack of bone audible even over Ethan's ringing ears. The operative cried out, collapsing, clutching their leg. Ethan watched, mesmerized and horrified. This wasn't the calm, composed Detective Chen who filed meticulous reports. This was something ancient, something dangerous, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her suppressed past, its feathers tipped with razor blades. She moved with an unsettling grace, her eyes focused, devoid of emotion, a hunter in her element. The third assailant, seeing the fate of their comrades, lunged at Sarah with a combat knife. Sarah sidestepped the thrust with impossible speed, her hand a blur as it clamped onto the assailant's wrist, twisting it until the knife dropped. In a single, fluid motion, she spun, using the assailant's own body as a shield as she delivered a devastating elbow strike to their temple. The operative crumpled, unconscious before they hit the ground. Ethan stood frozen, his weapon still clutched in his hand, his mouth slightly agape. It was over in less than 10 seconds. The attackers lay still, incapacitated, but not dead. Sarah stood over them, her chest heaving slightly, her eyes still holding that primal, focused intensity. The raw power emanating from her was almost palpable. Just then, the wail of sirens pierced the quiet. Captain Davies' cruiser, followed by 2 patrol cars, screeched to a halt beside them. Captain Davies, his face a mixture of worry and grim determination, was out of his car before it fully stopped, his hand on his holstered weapon. He took in the scene, the shattered window of their car, the 3 unconscious figures on the ground, and Sarah standing over them, her breathing still heavy, a sheen of sweat on her brow, her composure slowly returning. "What in God's name happened here?" Captain Davies demanded, his eyes wide as he scanned the downed operatives. Then Sarah. He saw the aftermath, not the ballet of violence that had just unfolded. He saw Sarah, now regaining her professional composure, her face settling back into its familiar, controlled mask. He saw Ethan, still slightly stunned, his own weapon loose in his hand. "Ambush, Captain," Ethan managed, his voice a little hoarse. "They hit us hard." Sarah handled it. He looked at her, a profound shift in his understanding of his partner. Sarah nodded, her voice steady now, almost too steady. "They were highly trained, used a non-lethal, incapacitating gas from the broken window. Luckily, we reacted quickly." She gestured vaguely to the ground. "They were aiming for our weapons, attempting to disarm us. Standard snatch-and-grab tactics, but with a surprising level of skill." She was already weaving a narrative, a carefully constructed version of events that aligned with acceptable police procedure, obscuring the raw, brutal efficiency Ethan had just witnessed. Captain Davies eyed the unconscious figures. Then Sarah. He knew instinctively that "handled it" was a gross understatement. He had heard the rumors, and now, seeing the results, he couldn't deny the unsettling effectiveness. "Call it in," he ordered the patrol officers, his gaze still fixed on Sarah. "Get these men processed. I want to know who they are and who sent them." His eyes narrowed, a seed of suspicion firmly planted. He acknowledged her combat prowess but was still deeply unsettled by its intensity. Meanwhile, miles away, in a secluded, minimalist lair that reflected his cold precision, Cale received a coded report. The screen glowed with tactical data, showing the failed ambush. His lips, thin and bloodless, curved into a chilling smile. "So, the Phoenix still burns," he murmured, his voice a low, raspy whisper. "Good. The game has truly begun." He had anticipated her skill, even counted on it. This wasn't a setback, it was a confirmation. He ran a holographic simulation of the encounter, analyzing Sarah's movements, detecting familiar patterns. He recognized the efficiency, the ruthless precision, a reflection of his own teaching, a spark of pride, twisted and dark, flickered in his eyes. He activated a new series of protocols, accelerating his timeline. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving his ultimate superiority, about showing Sarah that no matter how far she ran, how much she tried to deny her true nature, she would always be his creation. He needed to push her, to break her, and then to rebuild her in his image. He would leave her another message, a more direct taunt, one that would force her hand. The next target would be designed to hit her where she lived, to drag her fully back into the shadows. Captain Davies, back at the precinct, had already started digging deeper. He pulled up classified government files, using his highest clearance, bypassing the usual bureaucracy. He searched for Project Chimera, the rumored code name for the clandestine program Sarah had vaguely alluded to. The information he found was sparse, heavily redacted, but enough to confirm its existence and its unsanctioned nature. He saw the training records, the extraordinary physical and mental conditioning, and the disturbing graduation rates. A cold knot formed in his stomach. Sarah Chen wasn't just a highly skilled detective. She was a ghost a weapon honed by a shadowy entity, a legend in a world he barely understood. And now that legend was back, whether she wanted to be or not, and the city was caught in its crosshairs. He saw the scar on her wrist in her file picture, a faint line like a brand. It clicked into place. The heists, the impossible entries, the ambush. It all pointed to one thing: Sarah was tied to this, not as a victim, but as a key player in a game far larger and deadlier than any he could comprehend. He knew he had to keep an eye on her, to understand the full extent of her capabilities, and to determine if she was still an asset to be trusted, or a dangerous liability. The line blurred, and he was wary, yet undeniably intrigued. The serpent's coil tightened around the city and around Sarah. Cale's latest message arrived not as a whisper, but a roar alive, encrypted broadcast hijacking every major news channel's feed. On screen, the serpentine symbol shimmered before dissolving into a chillingly familiar face. Cale, his eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on the camera as if staring directly into Sarah's soul. He spoke of reclaiming what was lost, of dismantling the flawed systems that had cast him aside. He announced his next target, the National Archives, a bastion of historical truth and national security, containing not only priceless historical documents, but also the highly classified records of defunct government programs, including Project Chimera. He set a deadline: precisely 24 hours. A countdown timer appeared in the corner of the screen, ticking down relentlessly. This wasn't just a heist. It was a public declaration of war, a direct challenge to Sarah, daring her to confront the very past she had tried to escape. For Sarah, the National Archives was more than just a target. It was a ghost. It was the original training facility for Project Chimera, the sterile, brutal crucible where Cale had forged her. Every corridor, every hidden chamber, every reinforced door held a memory, a phantom echo of her past. It was the symbolic arena where her two lives would inevitably collide. The news of the target sent a jolt of visceral recognition through her, a wave of cold dread. She knew the archive's weaknesses, its hidden pathways, its secret vulnerabilities, because she had been taught to exploit them. "He knows," Sarah whispered, her voice strained, staring at the screen. "He knows I know the archives inside and out. He's luring me there. Ethan." Ethan felt a surge of professional outrage, a public declaration, a direct challenge. It defied all logic, all criminal procedure. But as he looked at Sarah, he understood. This was Cale's masterpiece, designed to break her spirit, to force her back into the darkness. "Then we go," he said, his voice firm, unwavering. "We stop him." Sarah shook her head, her eyes distant, already processing the myriad dangers. "No, I have to go alone." Ethan recoiled, a sharp pang of alarm shooting through him. "Alone, Sarah? That's insane. He knows you. He's better than anyone we've ever faced. This is a trap." His logical mind screamed at the reckless abandon. "It is a trap, Ethan," Sarah agreed, turning to face him, her eyes filled with a grim resolve. "And it's for me. He won't hurt you if you're not there. But if you are, he'll use you. As leverage. As a demonstration. He'll break you to show me what happens to those who stand against him. To those I care about." She placed a hand on his arm, her touch fleeting but insistent. "You don't understand. Ethan, this isn't a police operation. This is personal. He will kill you. I'm your partner." "Sarah," Ethan retorted, his own resolve hardening. "And a police officer. My job is to protect this city, and to protect my partner. We face this together." He wouldn't be sidelined. He wouldn't let her walk into a meat grinder alone. His loyalty, once a measured professional respect, had deepened into something fierce and unyielding. The orderly detective, who once preferred paperwork to peril, now stood ready to walk into the heart of the storm for the woman beside him. He saw the flicker of appreciation, of reluctant acceptance, in her eyes. Captain Davies, however, had other ideas. After seeing Cale's chilling broadcast and reviewing Sarah's redacted file more thoroughly, he called them into his office. Chen, Riley. This operation is officially being handed over to a federal task force. Too many unknowns. Too much at stake. He looked directly at Sarah, his gaze firm, suspicious. Your past affiliations, Chen, make you a liability in this situation. You're sidelined. Effective immediately. Sarah bristled, her jaw tight. Captain, I'm the only one who truly understands Cale's methods. I can anticipate his moves. Precisely my concern. Detective, Davies countered, his voice clipped. Your understanding could be a weakness, or worse. Until your role in Project Chimera is fully vetted, you're off the case. Riley, you're with the federal team. Your by-the-book approach is needed to keep them grounded. He was trying to separate them, to remove the unpredictable element of Sarah while still using Ethan's steadfast nature. But Ethan, looking at Sarah's controlled fury, knew what she would do. He wouldn't let her go alone. He feigned compliance, nodding deferentially. Understood, Captain. That night, as the city slept, Ethan found Sarah already preparing to leave the precinct. She had packed a minimalist bag, her movements efficient, ghost-like. I knew you wouldn't listen, she said, not looking at him, but her voice held a hint of resignation, perhaps even relief. Did you really think I'd let you walk into Cale's trap alone? Ethan asked, his voice low. We're partners. Sarah, through thick and thin, even through secret, Black Ops pasts. He pulled out a worn map of the archives, marked with what he knew of its public access points and security schematics. I've been studying the blueprints, public access, security rotations. He showed her a small, modified device. A comm scrambler, and this. He pulled out a small, highly sensitive audio recorder. For evidence, we might need something beyond our word. He was adapting, using his own meticulousness to aid her shadowy mission. Sarah looked at him. Truly looked at him. For the first time since Cale's broadcast, a hint of a smile, small and fleeting, touched her lips. You really are by the book, aren't you? Riley. Somebody has to be, he replied, a faint smile on his own face. Otherwise, who's going to fill out all the paperwork when we catch Cale? They planned their infiltration meticulously, using Sarah's intimate knowledge of the archives and Ethan's keen understanding of police and security protocols. They bypassed the initial layers of federal security that were now swarming the building, slipping through forgotten maintenance tunnels and overlooked service entrances. The archives was a cavernous, imposing structure, its long, silent corridors echoing with the weight of history. But tonight, it was a tomb, a stage set for Cale's twisted play. As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, Sarah moved with an unnerving familiarity, a ghost haunting her own past. Every shadow seemed to hold a memory for her, every faint hum of machinery, a forgotten echo of her training. Suddenly, a hidden pressure plate triggered a silent alarm. Before they could react, a reinforced steel gate slammed down, bisecting the corridor between them. Sarah lunged forward, but it was too late. The clang reverberated, loud and final. Ethan was on one side, Sarah on the other, separated. Cale's voice, amplified and distorted, echoed from hidden speakers. Sarah, my dear Phoenix, did you really think you could bring guests to our reunion? The voice was a silken sneer, dripping with dark amusement. A detective. How quaint. Such mundane company for someone of your talents. Ethan heard Sarah curse under her breath, her eyes blazing with frustration and fear for him. She knew this was Cale's doing, a deliberate maneuver to isolate them, to fulfill his twisted game. "Don't worry. Detective Riley," Cale's voice continued, now directed at Ethan, laced with mocking condescension. "I've prepared a little welcome for you, a taste of what Sarah endured. Perhaps then you'll understand the true nature of the world she left behind." From the shadows ahead, two figures emerged. They weren't the bumbling thugs from the docks. These were Cale's elite, clad in advanced stealth suits, their faces obscured by dark visors. They moved with the same chilling precision Sarah possessed, a mirror image of her past, designed by the same hand. Ethan instinctively raised his weapon, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He was alone, utterly outmatched, facing an enemy whose skills dwarfed anything he had ever encountered in his orderly world of crime scenes and paperwork. He was a man of logic and procedure, and now he was thrust into a situation that defied both. He felt a cold sweat prickle his skin, but his grip on his weapon remained steady. He wouldn't run. He wouldn't betray Sarah's trust. On the other side of the gate, Sarah heard Cale's taunting voice, saw the two elite operatives closing in on Ethan. A raw, desperate cry escaped her lips. "Ethan, no." She pounded on the steel gate, but it was unyielding, a solid wall between her and her partner. Her mentor was playing his game, turning her loyalty into her greatest weakness. Cale had sealed her in a different section of the archives, a path designed specifically for her. A series of deadly traps and challenges that only she could navigate. A gauntlet designed to test her limits, to push her to the brink. She was now drawn into a deadly cat-and-mouse game with the ghost, who had anticipated her every move. Cale's voice echoed again, chillingly calm. "The clock is ticking, my phoenix. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and counting. Will you reclaim your past, or let your attachments be your downfall?" The countdown timer projected onto a large screen in the main atrium, visible to the federal agents now infiltrating the building, underscored the terrifying pressure. Cale's plan was not just to steal data, but to destroy the archives and everything in it if he wasn't stopped in time. A grand, destructive statement. Sarah realized with a sickening lurch that the target wasn't just the data or the history, but her. Cale wanted her to choose him, or the world she now tried to protect, and Ethan was a pawn in that deadly choice. Sarah turned from the gate, her face a mask of grim determination. She had to navigate Cale's maze, overcome his challenges, and find a way to help Ethan. All while the clock ticked down. She was on her own, truly isolated, facing the ghost of her past in the symbolic arena of her training. The air in the archives grew heavy with unspoken tension, the silence broken only by the faint, rhythmic ticking of the countdown. Every second was a hammer blow, driving her deeper into the ultimate test. The steel gate separating Ethan and Sarah shimmered with an impenetrable energy, a physical manifestation of the chasm Cale had deliberately carved between their worlds. On Ethan's side, the two shadowy figures in stealth suits advanced with chilling synchronicity. They moved with a disturbing fluidity, their every step silent, their posture coiled and lethal. Ethan had seen their like in simulations, but never in the flesh, never with the cold, predatory intent radiating from them. He was a good cop, by the book, proficient in urban combat, but these were something else entirely. They were honed, precise instruments of destruction, a reflection of Sarah's own shadowed past. He raised his service weapon, his hands steady despite the frantic pounding of his heart. "Police, drop your weapons." His voice, trained to command, seemed to echo uselessly in the vast, silent corridor. They ignored him, closing in, their visors reflecting the dim emergency lights of the archives. Ethan fired, aiming for a non-lethal shot, a shoulder. The first operative, impossibly fast, simply blurred, sidestepping the bullet with contemptuous ease. The second lunged, a silent, dark shape. Ethan's police training kicked in. Block, pivot, counter. He swung his weapon in a desperate arc, a defensive move. But the operative was faster, closer. A gloved hand gripped his wrist, twisting it with brutal efficiency, forcing him to drop his gun. Pain flared, a sharp, white-hot agony. He gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. The operative moved to disarm him completely. But Ethan, fueled by a surge of defiance, lashed out with a desperate kick to the knee. It was a move he'd seen Sarah use, instinctive, born of desperation. The operative stumbled back, momentarily surprised by the unexpected ferocity. Ethan used the brief opening, his mind racing, scanning his surroundings. He was a detective, not a commando. He needed to be smart, not just strong. He saw a heavy, rolling book cart near a historical display. He feigned a retreat, then spun, shoving the heavy cart with all his might towards the operative. The wheels screeched, and the cart slammed into the operative's legs. It wasn't enough to take them down, but it bought him a precious second. He scrambled, grabbing a heavy, ornamental bronze bust from a display pedestal. It felt heavy and unfamiliar in his hands. The second operative was on him then, moving like smoke. Ethan swung the bust wildly, connecting with a sickening thud against the operative's armored arm. The impact vibrated up his arm, making his teeth ache. The operative grunted, but kept coming, their movements unhindered. They were trained to absorb blows. Ethan felt a cold dread. He was out of his depth. He was fighting ghosts. He ducked under a swift punch, the wind of it rustling his hair. He remembered Sarah's words. He'll use you, as leverage, as a demonstration. He wouldn't let that happen. Not here. Not now. He wouldn't be the reason she failed. He scrambled backward, trying to create distance, but they cornered him against a wall, their movements fluid, trapping him. He saw the gleam of a stun baton in the first operative's hand, raised for a disabling blow. His breath hitched. This was it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the gate, Sarah moved through Cale's maze, her senses screaming with the urgency of the ticking clock and the knowledge of Ethan's predicament. Cale's traps were exquisite, designed with a cruel artistry she recognized intimately. Laser grids that pulsed with invisible energy, pressure plates that triggered alarms or noxious gas, silent drones equipped with tasers. She disarmed them with chilling efficiency, her training from Project Chimera kicking in fully. She slid through laser beams, disarmed proximity sensors, and deactivated sonic emitters with practiced ease. Her movements a deadly ballet in the dimly lit corridors. She was a ghost, a legend. She reached a chamber filled with a dizzying array of tripwires, each connected to a high-voltage electrical current. Kyle's voice crackled over the intercom, a triumphant sneer. Ah, the Electro Maze. Phoenix. A classic. Remember our first lesson, precision over power. Let's see if you still recall the grace of the serpent. He was mocking her, forcing her to confront the brutal methods he had instilled in her. Sarah's face hardened. She remembered the agonizing shock, the burns, the weeks of recovery if she made a single mistake. Cale had taught her to respect pain, to use it as a tool, not a deterrent. She closed her eyes for a fleeting second, calming her breathing, visualizing the invisible pathways, remembering the subtle hum of the currents, the slight shifts in air pressure. Then, she moved. Each step was deliberate, each bend of her body a precise calculation. She flowed through the deadly grid, her limbs moving with impossible fluidity, her fingers brushing past wires that would have instantly incapacitated an ordinary human. Her movements were a testament to hundreds of hours of brutal, relentless training. She was a living shadow, dancing through a web of death. As she navigated the maze, Cale's voice shifted, a subtle change in his tone. Impressive. Phoenix. But are you still burdened by weakness? He showed her a live feed of Ethan, cornered, disarmed, facing the stun baton. Ethan's face was grim, but defiant. He was refusing to break. The sight sent a fresh surge of fury and fear through Sarah. Her concentration wavered for a split second, and her elbow grazed a tripwire. A spark flared, and a jolt of pain shot up her arm. She gritted her teeth, pushing through it. Kyle wanted her distracted, wanted her to fail. He wanted her to see Ethan's impending defeat, to remind her of the attachment she had chosen. Tick-tock. Sarah. Cale's voice gloated. The archive's self-destruct is accelerating. 20 minutes until full data purge and structural collapse. Your friend doesn't have much time. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. 20 minutes. She had to be faster. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the protesting muscles, the throbbing pain in her arm. She reached the end of the electromaze, disarming the final circuit with a desperate jab of her fingers. She plunged into a dark service tunnel, knowing it led directly to the central data core, Cale's primary objective. Back with Ethan, the first operative raised the stun baton. Ethan braced himself, his mind frantically searching for an impossible out. Just as the baton descended, a metallic clang echoed through the corridor, followed by a shower of sparks. Ethan's eyes snapped open. The steel gate, the one that had separated him from Sarah, lay mangled on the floor, torn open from the other side. Sarah stood in the jagged opening, her face streaked with sweat, a fresh cut bleeding faintly on her temple, her eyes blazing with an incandescent fury. She hadn't just broken through, she had ripped through. The two operatives, momentarily distracted by the impossible breach, turned their attention to her. They exchanged a silent, professional nod and advanced. This was their true opponent. Sarah didn't hesitate. She launched herself forward, a primal scream of rage escaping her lips. This wasn't the calculated dance she'd performed moments ago. This was raw, untamed power, fueled by her desperate need to protect Ethan. Her movements were a blur of strikes and blocks, each one delivered with devastating force. She parried a kick from the first operative, twisting their leg with a sickening crunch that made even Ethan wince. The operative crumpled. The second operative, seeing the ferocity, tried to retreat, but Sarah was on them. A phantom, her fists blurring, delivering a barrage of strikes that were almost too fast to follow. She moved with the speed of a viper, the force of a battering ram, dismantling them with a savage grace. Every punch, every kick, was aimed to incapacitate, to neutralize, to ensure they would not rise again. The operative collapsed, groaning, their visor cracked. Sarah stood over them, chest heaving, a raw, triumphant energy radiating from her. Her eyes were still burning with that primal fire, but a flicker of self-awareness, of the Sarah Ethan knew, began to return. She glanced at Ethan, a silent question in her eyes. Ethan, though battered and bruised, managed a shaky nod. He picked up his fallen weapon, feeling a surge of awe and profound relief. He had seen the true Phoenix, and she was terrifyingly magnificent. Just then, the heavy footsteps of the Federal Task Force and Captain Davies echoed down the main atrium. They had followed the trail of the heists, the clues Cale had deliberately left, and the increasing energy signatures Sarah's movements had created. They rounded the corner into the corridor, their weapons raised, expecting a chaotic firefight. Instead, they saw Sarah Chen, standing triumphant over two elite, unconscious operatives, the mangled steel gate behind her, and Detective Ethan Riley, bruised but alive, standing beside her, his weapon now firmly in hand. Captain Davies froze, his eyes wide. He scanned the scene, the debris, the damaged gate, the sheer destructive power evident in Sarah's immediate vicinity. His gaze fell upon Sarah's face, etched with exertion and a chilling resolve. He saw the undeniable evidence of her capabilities, far beyond anything he had read in her redacted file. He saw the legend. His expression shifted from suspicion to stunned disbelief. Then slowly, undeniably, to profound awe. The whispers, the redacted files, the rumors, they were all true. Sarah Chen was indeed a force to be reckoned with, and she had just saved his team, and perhaps the city. The federal agents, initially wary, lowered their weapons, their faces a mixture of confusion and bewildered admiration. They had heard of Kale's operatives, the mythical ghosts who were virtually unstoppable. Now, two of them lay defeated at the feet of a single detective. The silence in the corridor was thick with the weight of their collective realization. This wasn't just a police officer, this was something extraordinary. The vindication was unspoken, but powerfully clear on the faces of all who witnessed the aftermath. The aftermath of the Archives showdown was a controlled chaos, a swirling eddy of flashing lights, terse commands, and the hushed urgency of federal agents. Kyle, defeated but not broken, was finally apprehended, found by Sarah and Ethan in the central data core, attempting to initiate the final data purge and collapse. He had a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips, a twisted satisfaction in having forced Sarah into the open, in having seen her unleash the raw power he had once cultivated. His motives, as they unfolded in the interrogation rooms over the next few days, were a bitter cocktail of greed and a profound personal vengeance against the program that had discarded him, and against Sarah, his most promising student, who had dared to walk away from his shadow. He had wanted to prove that his vision of power and control was superior, that the world needed his ruthless order, and that Sarah, by clinging to a softer path, was ultimately weak. He had lost everything. His organization was dismantled, his network exposed, his twisted legacy shattered. He faced life imprisonment, a chilling silence finally settling over the ghost who had haunted Sarah's past. Captain Davies. His initial suspicion completely eroded by the undeniable proof of Sarah's capabilities and Ethan's unwavering loyalty, approached them a few days later in the precinct, his face a mixture of contrition and profound respect. The media, hungry for answers, had been fed a carefully crafted narrative of a coordinated law enforcement effort, but within the hallowed halls of the department, everyone knew the truth. "Detective Chen," Captain Davies began, his voice surprisingly gentle, "I owe you an apology. My judgments were limited. My understanding of your past was insufficient. You didn't just save the Archives, you saved this city, and you saved your partner." He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at Ethan. "And Riley, your steadfastness, your belief in your partner. It's something I won't soon forget. You truly are a credit to the badge." He then offered Sarah a thick folder, marked with a new, prestigious departmental seal. "This is a proposal, a new unit, specialized threat assessment and response. It will operate outside the typical parameters, designed to handle threats that fall beyond conventional law enforcement. It requires someone with your unique skill set, someone who understands the shadows because they've walked in them. The resources will be substantial, the autonomy significant." Sarah took the folder, her fingers tracing the seal. This wasn't just a promotion, it was an acknowledgement, a validation of who she was, not just who she tried to be. It was a chance to finally integrate the two halves of her life, to use her hidden past to protect, rather than conceal. She would no longer have to live in the shadows, or pretend to be less than she was. "And Detective Riley?" Sarah asked, her gaze meeting Captain Davies. Captain Davies smiled, a rare, genuine expression, naturally. "We'd like him to be your second in command. His meticulousness, his unwavering moral compass, his ability to ground you. It's exactly what this unit will need. He's the anchor to your storm. Chen." Ethan felt a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for Sarah. This was what she deserved. This was the opportunity for her to finally embrace her true self, to use her extraordinary talents for unambiguous good. "I'd be honored, Captain," Ethan said, his voice firm, meeting Sarah's gaze with a shared understanding. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of Kale's vendetta, had evolved into something unbreakable. Later that evening, after the adrenaline had finally receded and the city lights twinkled peacefully outside, Ethan and Sarah found themselves on the precinct's rooftop, the cool night air a welcome balm. The city stretched out beneath them, a sprawling tapestry of light and shadow, saved from destruction by their combined efforts. "You know," Ethan began, leaning against the railing, his gaze distant. When I first saw that scar, and then when you told me about Kale, I admit, I was scared. Not of you, but of the world you came from. The one that could make someone like Kale. Sarah chuckled softly, a rare, genuine sound. It was a dark world. Ethan, designed to strip away everything human, to make us instruments. Kale, he embraced that. He thought it made him stronger. She paused, her gaze falling on her own hand, flexed, then relaxed. I fought it. Every day. I wanted to be more than a weapon. And you are, Ethan affirmed, turning to face her, his eyes sincere. You always were. You chose a different path. Sarah, you chose to protect, even when it meant exposing the very thing you tried to hide. He looked at the subtle scar behind her ear, now visible in the moonlight, a silent testament to her past. You're not just a legend. Sarah, you're a hero. My hero. A warmth spread through Sarah, a feeling she hadn't realized she was missing. For so long, her past had been a burden, a secret she guarded fiercely. Now, in Ethan's eyes, it was simply a part of her, accepted, even celebrated. And you, by the book Detective Riley, she said, a playful note in her voice. You risked everything for me, for the right thing. You showed me that order and courage aren't mutually exclusive. They're strongest when they work together. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the city's distant hum a gentle backdrop to their shared understanding. The air felt lighter, the burden of secrets lifted. Their partnership had transcended the professional, evolving into a profound bond of trust and mutual respect. The new calm wasn't an absence of challenges, but a quiet confidence in their ability to face them, together. Sarah felt a genuine sense of belonging, a feeling she hadn't experienced since before Project Chimera. The city was safe. Kyle was contained, and her future, for the first time in a long time, felt clear and full of purpose. 1 year later, the city was thriving, a vibrant testament to the quiet heroes who protected it from the shadows. Sarah Chen, now officially designated as the lead of the Specialized Threat Assessment and Response STAR Unit, moved through the newly renovated, state-of-the-art STAR headquarters with a newfound ease. Her posture was still sharp, her gaze still keen, but the guardedness around her eyes had softened, replaced by a quiet confidence. She wore her past not as a burden, but as a foundation. Her extraordinary skills now fully integrated into her mission to serve and protect. The faint scar behind her ear, once a hidden mark of her clandestine past, was now simply a part of her, a testament to battles fought and won. Ethan Riley, her trusted second-in-command, was the meticulous anchor of the STAR unit. His desk, unlike his apartment, was a dynamic, organized chaos of maps, flowcharts, and threat assessments, reflecting the complex, ever-evolving nature of their work. He still found comfort in order, but his understanding of it had broadened. He no longer sought rigid predictability, but rather the logical patterns within the chaos, a calm eye in the center of the storm. His respect for Sarah had only deepened, transformed into an unwavering faith in her judgment and capabilities. Their partnership was a seamless synergy, a blend of Sarah's lethal intuition and Ethan's methodical precision, making them an unstoppable force against the city's most formidable threats. Sarah, remembering Kale's twisted philosophy and the brutal, isolating training of Project Chimera, had recognized a critical gap in traditional law enforcement. She couldn't change the past, but she could shape the future, driven by a desire to ensure no other operative, whether from her world or any other, would be left to choose between becoming a weapon or living in hiding. She established the Phoenix Protocol within the STAR unit. This wasn't a combat school. It was a mentorship program focused on integrating advanced capabilities with ethical policing, emphasizing moral strength over ruthless efficiency. Today, Sarah was personally overseeing a session with a small, hand-picked group of recruits, officers who displayed exceptional aptitude but also a strong moral compass. She was teaching them advanced urban stealth techniques, demonstrating how to move through complex environments unseen. Not for covert operations, but for tactical infiltration to minimize civilian casualties and maximize apprehension success. Her movements were still fluid, graceful, but now imbued with a gentle patience as she guided a young, eager officer through a difficult maneuver. "It's not just about what you can do," she explained, her voice calm and clear, "but why you do it. The power is in the choice." Ethan stood by, observing, a quiet smile on his face. He watched Sarah, no longer just his partner, but a mentor, a leader, a legend in her own right, building a legacy of principled power. He thought of the small street vendor he had helped so long ago, a simple act of upholding decency. Now, Sarah was doing it on a grander scale, her past not just redeemed, but transformed into a beacon of hope. The day ended as the sun dipped below the city skyline, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Sarah and Ethan stood side by side on the training ground, watching the last of the recruits disperse. In the distance, the city lights began to twinkle, a familiar, comforting sight. Sarah's gaze settled on a small, bronze phoenix emblem, subtly integrated into the star unit's insignia on the training manual, clutched in a recruit's hand. It wasn't a symbol of fiery destruction, but of rebirth, resilience, and the enduring power of choosing light over darkness. The city, once threatened by the specter of a hidden past, now rested safely under the watchful eyes of those who embraced their true selves, protecting its future with both strength and unwavering integrity. The quiet hum of order had returned, but it was a richer, more profound harmony, built on trust, courage, and the enduring belief that even from the deepest shadows, a legend could rise to bring a new spring. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment, share this story with those who need inspiration, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.